Knicks legend Willis Reed passed away on Tuesday at the age of 80, and there's been an outpouring of emotions from Knickerbocker fans and sports fans. New York Post sports columnist Mike Vaccaro's latest column on nypost.com is about the Knicks' forever captain, and Mike joins me now to discuss. Mike, how you doing?
I'm doing well, Dexter. How are you today?
I am well, Mike. And it's hard to be asked to think of an iconic New York sports moment and not consider May 8th, 1970. That's Game 7 of the NBA Finals that year when Reed made a dramatic entrance onto the court. So, Mike, when you think of Reed's legacy, does that moment encapsulate his career for you?
It does, and it's almost unfair because Willis Reed was a great player before he was a courageous one. He was the MVP of the league that year, won the All-Star Game MVP, and would soon win the Finals MVP. He was the first person to ever do that. It was only joined in history by Michael Jordan and Shaquille O'Neal, pretty rare company. But he was a great player who rose to almost every occasion when the Knicks needed him to, including Game 7 that night. He didn't just hobble onto the floor. He also hit two early jump shots, which were the only two shots he made all game. But that set the tone as the Knicks ran away and hid from the Lakers that night. Really the lid came off Madison Square Garden, not only when he walked onto the floor, but also after he made those two early jumpers, and the Knicks fed off him from there.
It really fed off that, and one of the iconic moments in New York sports history. I was telling Mike before we started recording here, that is an event I definitely would have loved to have attended. And Reed was known to everybody. Knicks fans knew him as the captain of those championship Knicks teams in the 70s. How seriously did he take that role, Mike, and how did his teammates appreciate his leadership?
Yeah, he took it very seriously. I mean, some people are named captain of a team. He just was the captain of the team. I know Clyde said he doesn't remember anybody ever discussing who the captain of the team would be. They just always knew it was Willis. And that tells you a little bit about not only his leadership, but also the respect that his teammates had for him that sometimes bordered on reverence, certainly in later years. I mean, Willis stopped playing in 1974, and most of those guys haven't shot a basketball since the mid or late 70s. And yet all these years later, they still refer to him as the captain, and they still talk about, in reverent tones, about what his leadership was like on those teams.
Still talking about that today. Reed's retired number 19 that hangs in the rafters of Madison Square Garden. And for the kids out there, Mike, who may not have seen the captain play, I'm somebody who did not. In your eyes, what made Willis Reed one of the greatest Knicks ever?
Well, he was fearless. He was an undersized center who was always going against taller centers every night. Will Chamberlain, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Nate Thurmond. And he was unintimidated by them. And in fact, he was the intimidating one. A lot of those guys talking later years about how they realized they were going to be in for 48 minutes of bruising war every time they played him. And he was also a terrific offensive player. Look, I mean, we think of him as this big, burly muscle type, and he had a soft jumper. He was one of the most reliable Knicks offensive players, probably their most gifted player. And it's a reminder that he was really one of the most well-rounded players in Knicks history, for sure.
Absolutely is. I said number 19 up in the rafters at MSG. That is Mike Vaccaro, New York Post sports columnist, with a great column on now the late Willis Reed. Mike, thank you for your time and your great words on Willis Reed. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Dexter. Great talking to you.
Always.